tonight, President Biden addressed the nation to call for new gun control measures. And as always, seems to be the case with these things, he presented some sensible, practical proposals and then included some which will never pass the Congress.
We need to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. And if we can't ban assault weapons, then we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21. Strengthen background checks. Enact safe storage law and red flag laws. Repeal the immunity that protects gun manufacturers from liability. Address the mental health crisis, deepening the trauma of gun violence and as a consequence of that violence. These are rational, common sense measures. Here's what it all means. It all means this. We should reinstate the assault weapons ban on high-capacity magazines that we passed in 1994 with bipartisan support in Congress and the support of law enforcement.
All right, there is a lot to unpack there, all right? So let's take a step back. Wednesday's mass shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 4 people were killed, was the country's 23rd mass shooting of the year. Mass shooting is defined as an incident where 4 or more people, not including the gunman, are shot. There has only been one day without a mass shooting since last week's massacre at that elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Now, not surprisingly, some Democrats, including President Biden, are calling for increasingly restrictive gun control legislation, some of which will never pass. And some Republicans have refused to consider any changes in the laws at all. The vast majority of us, however, believe there is some common ground on how certain gun laws can be reformed. And here's the focus. Changes that specifically try to target keeping guns out of the wrong hands, rather than laws that target law-abiding citizens with a constitutional right to possess a weapon. Now, from increasing background checks, red flag laws that allow law enforcement to temporarily take away a person's guns under certain conditions, and increasing the age for purchasing semi-automatic rifles. Those are some sensible, common ground areas to pursue. Now, President Biden discussed these issues, but he went well beyond that by calling, for example, for assault weapon legislation and trying to remove the immunity, some of which simply will not pass. And as happens so often on this topic, radicals on both sides are digging in their heels, saying that their way is the only way. For example, following the Texas shooting, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blasted Senate Democrats for being complicit in the violence. Her fellow squad member, Rashida Tlaib, took to Twitter to say that Republicans don't care about mass shootings. Meanwhile, radicals on the right keep insisting that the guns aren't the problem, and that if anything, the U.S. needs less gun laws, not more.
If they vote for gun control, they're going to find out big time that that's not what Republicans want from their Republican leaders.
The moment that we take from our citizenry our ability to take our government back is the moment that the ability of dictatorial forces increases to the point where perhaps they will try to implement a dictatorial government at the federal level.
Okay, look. Of course there is something between blaming Republicans for these criminals' actions and doing nothing to change the laws. So let's talk some of the common sense proposals. The first thing we can do is raise the age for a person to buy a semi-automatic rifle from 18 to 21. In both the Buffalo supermarket shooting and the Uvalde school massacre, the gunmen were both 18. A law like this would have prevented them from legally purchasing the weapons and potentially saving scores of lives. But this is the important part. According to a recent Reuters Ipsos poll taken after the Uvalde shooting, nearly 3/4 of respondents, 72%, said they were in favor of raising the legal age to buy any kind of gun, not just semi-automatic rifles, from 18 to 21. So it seems that lawmakers shouldn't face much reasonable backlash if they enacted such a law. We can also increase background checks for gun buyers. Last year, the House passed a bill that would have extended the amount of time from 3 business days to 10 that a licensed gun dealer has to wait to receive a completed background check prior to selling a gun to someone without a license. That bill didn't receive a vote in the Senate. Again, according to the same poll, 84% of people support background checks for all firearms. 78% are Republicans. say they would support a candidate in the upcoming midterms who supported passing new background checks for gun purchases. 10-day background check might have prevented the Tulsa shooting, as police there say the gunman purchased one of the weapons he used on Monday and another just hours before beginning his assault.
At 2 p.m. on June the 1st, Mr. Lewis purchased a semi-automatic rifle from a local gun store. That semi-automatic rifle was an AR-15 style rifle. We know that Mr. Lewis purchased a semi-automatic handgun, a .40 caliber Smith & Wesson pistol, on May the 29th from a local pawn shop.
And then there are the so-called red flag laws, which allow police to confiscate firearms from people that courts determine are dangerous in some way. The orders often come after friends or relatives report concerns about someone who owns one or more guns and, has expressed suicidal thoughts or discussed shooting people. Law enforcement can also request courts in states with red flag laws to issue one of those orders. 19 states have these risk-based gun removal laws on the books already. Again, according to the Reuters Ipsos poll, 70% of Americans support red flag laws. Now, I am not saying this is going to solve all of our problems. President Biden and Democrats in Congress are pursuing a legislative package that would include many of these proposals, but Democrats are also asking for more restrictions that make it so much less politically viable. So here's the good news. A bipartisan group of senators have reportedly reached an agreement on a framework, whatever that means, for gun legislation that looks to provide increased funding for mental health services, as well as expand background checks for gun sales and incentivize states to pass their own red flag laws. That's good news. Look, for the last week, I've been saying that the most immediate thing we can do to stop mass shootings is to be more aware of the warning signs that often precede these kinds of tragedies. We are learning tonight, for example, about more information regarding the Texas shooter. Warning signs, things he was saying on social media, things people could have done to stop him. Gun control laws are not a panacea, but it seems there's no reason not to pass sensible laws that try to keep certain weapons out of the wrong hands. I want to be clear. Passing these laws won't end mass shootings. But if they make it that much harder for guns, particularly semi-automatic rifles, to get into the hands of people who could pose a serious risk to the public, our political leaders need to compromise. The president and the Democrats will not get all the legislation they want, period. And Republicans must be willing to at least try some of the most sensible proposals with regard to keeping weapons out of the wrong hands. It's what the vast majority of Americans want, even if we, aren't always the loudest voices in the room. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.